citizens' hearing on disclosure held in Washington in 2013, in which multiple credible witnesses testified about UFO incursions.
There is no doubt that the United States government has known about the extraterrestrial interactions with Earth and that their policies of denial in the alleged interest of national security are still in effect.
Paradigm Research Group, my organization, began by delivering to the entire Congress a full 30 hours of testimony, which I felt, and many do feel, was the most important citizen disclosure event at that time.
These objects know in great detail how our missiles operate, and they can shut down our missiles at any time.
We got a lot of media attention, including some attention from Congress. And of course we had these ex-congressmen sit in as we presented our case. So this movement, disclosure movement, has been going on for some time.
What kind of defense do we have against these things?
I think we changed a lot of minds. But then, of course, things changed the next day, the news cycles.
For years, UFO advocates have argued that such high-profile efforts were secretly subjected to government whisper campaigns, each designed to discredit witnesses and divert public attention from disclosure.
The government did everything in order to stop these whistleblowers or to deny these witnesses. But guess what? That did not stop the whistleblowers from talking, and it certainly did not stop the research. In fact, this little flame that began in the 1950s is now a raging fire, and it is illuminating all of the darkness.
But if the government has been conspiring to silence UFO researchers, witnesses, and believers since the Roswell crash, why? Is it to avoid widespread panic? Or was it something more strategic? Possibly, it was designed to keep the knowledge that was gleaned from extraterrestrial encounters from getting into so-called enemy hands. Washington, D.C., December 1960. Prominent think tank, the Brookings Institution, issues a 186-page government-funded report that examines, in part, the question of how humanity would react to the discovery of extraterrestrial life. The report speculates that if NASA were to make such a discovery public, it could result in chaos.
They used the Brookings Institute to get a report done and to talk about the implications of this. And it was kind of about, people will panic, markets will collapse, religion will collapse, blah, blah, blah.
I would be willing to accept that the original decision to withhold the truth was based, partly at least, on that concern. But that, over the years, has disappeared totally.
In a 2018 study conducted by Arizona State University, participants were asked to review media stories about recent discoveries that suggest extraterrestrial life exists. Surprisingly, researchers found that in the 2000s, the reaction to this idea has become almost entirely positive.
What this suggests is that even from a religious perspective, people have grown more accepting of the possibility of extraterrestrial life.
If fears of creating widespread panic are outdated, why is the U.S. military still so reluctant to share what it has learned about extraterrestrials and UFOs?
The fact that there might be panic in the streets, I think that was more of an excuse. I think the military aspect that the recovered craft could be used to develop military weaponry was probably more the reason for the secrecy.
San Diego, California, November 14th, 2004. Two fighter pilots from the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz investigate an unidentified aircraft off the coast of San Diego. They encounter a bright white, oval-shaped craft that resembles a massive tic-tac. It's over 40 feet long, and it has no windshield or wings.
Oh my gosh, dude.
According to Navy pilot David Fravor, the ship makes seemingly impossible stops and turns over the Pacific before accelerating away at thousands of miles per hour.
This is David Fravor, skilled pilot. He said, I am looking at speeds, 90-degree angles, stopping. Any human inside of what I'm watching could not sustain life.
We have these videotapes. We can actually calculate the velocity of these objects. We can calculate the G-forces on these ships. So that's the sea change. It used to be that if you were a UFO believer, the burden of proof was on you to prove that you saw something in the sky. Now it's shifted. Now the establishment has to prove that it isn't a visitor from another planet.
For UFO researchers, the recent videos finally provide clear evidence not only of what the government has been hiding for decades,
My gosh. Oh, big man.
but the potential reason for the cover-up.
The technology is the key. If any single factor explains UFO secrecy, it's the aspiration to acquire extraterrestrial technology. The nation that first acquires that technology is going to be in game-changing territory.
This is truly an arms race. Whoever figures this out first wins. So any developed nation is looking right now to leap ahead with a technological innovation based upon the reverse engineering of what we're seeing in the skies, what our pilots are engaging in the skies, what Commander Fravor chased.
To many, the military's desire to monopolize extraterrestrial technology is reason enough to explain a cover-up. But some believe there are additional motives for government secrecy, while others point to a general culture of bureaucratic secrecy that pervades all of government.
Some disclosure advocates say that the reason why we haven't seen disclosure yet is because of economics. That you have an oil-based economy, and clearly the craft that we see in the skies are not running on oil. They're using advanced propulsion systems that would completely transform the economies of Earth if they're ever implemented.
So, yes, it would have a negative financial impact for the wealthiest people who own the oil in the ground. But it's not the whole story.
The government seems to be completely unaccountable to the American public. They may be accountable to their superiors in the Department of Defense or at NASA or others, but they rarely release anything they do know.
I think we're afraid to find out what these phenomena are. The governments in particular are afraid, and the reason for that, I think, is because the contract between governments and their people is that governments provide security and that we provide loyalty to the government. If you even raise the issue of the possibility that UFOs are ETs, then that raises big questions about that contract, because it's clear that the government cannot provide security for us from these beings, and that would call into question, well, why should I be loyal to the government and everything else? It would undermine the sovereignty of the government, the sovereignty of the state.
But even with a growing number of more open-minded policies concerning both UFO reporting and disclosure, there are no doubt that the U.S. military's penchant for secrecy will ever really allow full disclosure. They insist that America is far too afraid that extraterrestrial knowledge could fall into the hands of its territorial enemies to ever admit that aliens do exist. Santiago, Chile. On November 11th, 2014, a Chilean Navy helicopter is on a routine daytime patrol mission flying north along the coast, west of Santiago. While filming the terrain, a technician observes a strange object flying to the left over the ocean. He aims his camera and records the encounter. The Navy immediately turns over the footage to the CEFAA, the Chilean government agency that investigates UFOs, and they release it.
We have the Chilean government also releasing all kinds of fighter footage from their own military jets. So the government and the military has been studying this for over 70 years. And they must have so much evidence, including video footage, that they are keeping secret from us that would boggle your mind.
Over the past 10 years, there has been a movement among many governments to declassify some of their UFO investigations and release them to the public.
I think that people around the world, in Belgium and Chile and in the UK and other countries, have said, you know, we ought to really take a look at what's going on.
But the fact is, the U.S. intelligence infrastructure is often deeply embedded in the infrastructures of those countries. So, in other words, they can't say boo without the U.S. and NSA particularly knowing about it.
If allies of the United States are reluctant to disclose the facts about UFOs and possible extraterrestrial visitation without American permission, what about America's adversaries? Hangzhou, China, July 7th, 2010. Chinese officials shut down Xiaoshan International Airport for nearly an hour after an unidentified aircraft is seen in the vicinity. The incident marks one of the very few times the Chinese ever publicly admit that UFO sightings happen in their country.
I can't see any circumstances where disclosure of an alien presence would do anything other than loosen the hold of the party on the people. It's not in China's interest to disclose.
In Russia, details about any recent UFO incidents are even harder to come by, as all media outlets are currently controlled by one man, Vladimir Putin.
Announcing the existence of aliens is not in any way going to strengthen Putin's hold on power. Why would he? What's the benefit to him? What would he get out of it? Putting one over on the Americans? Well, maybe, but the downside in terms of the one thing that Putin can't afford, instability, the downside is too big to gamble.
But if China and Russia are unwilling to disclose what they know about possible extraterrestrial contact, and no other countries will do so without the blessing of the United States, then why are we beginning to see a